Hello and welcome to NETSCAN on TV. My name is Futoon Sati, and with me in the studio is Mr. Gerard Kielty, who will be talking about his computerized food intolerance testing. Over the last 10 years, Mr. Kielty has treated more than 10,000 people, and he regularly cures about 40 different kinds of health problems without the use of drugs. Hello, Gerard, and welcome.
Hello, it's good of you to have me here. Okay.
Before we start, I would like to say that both my family and I and some friends have personally experienced the benefits of this amazing pain-free and drug-free technology. What you're about to hear now will not only amaze you, but will explain very clearly why we become unhealthy and how simple and easy to return to good health. Can we ask you, Gerard, would you please tell us what is the difference between food allergy and food intolerance?
It's a very good question. It's one that I get asked so often, and there is a major difference. So many doctors that I meet as I travel the world don't even know this answer to this question. A food allergy is something that gets tested in hospitals very often, of course, but it's something that occurs in the immune system. We have major glands in the body and they kick out chemistry. And that is a body's natural defense mechanism. And that's a chemical reaction. And that's a food allergy, an allergic response. But what I test with health scan, computer scanning, is I test electrical signals that go to the brain. And I test if your brain actually wants those signals that it gets from the various foods. And we'll be talking about this, of course, today in a great deal of detail. But that's the difference. A food allergy occurs in the immune system in here, and a food intolerance occurs in the brain. It's electrical resistance to the signals that your brain gets from the foods that you eat every day.
Yes, we all know, we all hear about food allergy, but we never heard about food intolerance. Is it a new thing?
It's not a new thing as such. I'm sure it's been around since the beginning of time. It's just that we've not had the technology to discover it, to investigate it. And of course we do have now. So I'm certain it's not a new thing. It's just that basically we're moving into this new era now of being able to check these things. And this is where we find most of the health problems are solved.
I see, I see. According to you, we are all intolerant to food. Is it something we are born with, or it does develop?
It can be either. I've treated about 10,000 people for food intolerance, and my feeling on this is that these things develop as you go through life. The brain becomes more and more intolerant, fed up with, cannot cope with these signals it gets from the foods on a day-to-day basis. So when your brain eventually gets a problem that it can't cope with, then it gives you one, because your brain runs your body. So it's something that generally develops, in my opinion. But you can, of course, be born with these things, but generally they develop.
I see, I see. Can you be allergic to something and not to be intolerant to it?
Yeah, absolutely, because remember, for the first question, we're not actually testing allergies. So if somebody comes to my clinic and I will always ask them if they have allergies to anything that has been tested and proven to be so, then if for example, they say, yes, I have a problem with wheat, then with an allergic response, then I will say, well, you've still got that. It doesn't matter what the intolerance shows, because they're two different things completely.
I see. I see here you have hundreds of letters from testimonial letters from patients that they have recovered from a vast range of health problems. Can you read some of these letters to us?
Yeah, we could quickly go through some of them. There's so many, it'd be impossible. But I mean, I just brought to the studio just a fraction of them. You know, these are letters that people have written.
Yeah, there's so many of them. Yeah.
And I've only seen these people once.
Yeah.
And they've recovered. This is just a tiny fraction of the people I've cured. Nobody expects everybody to write letters. But the fact is that people do take the time to do this, because it's so important for the generations to come that we prove that the fact that, you know, if I cure a person of a migraine or an eczema and they do not give us the evidence that it's been done, then that's lost forever. and it's lost for the generations to come. But just quickly, I'll run through the list of sort of health problems that I cure, and I do mean cure in most cases, 100% in almost every case. Incredible recoveries, and one simple test is all it takes. There's about 40 items here, so we just need to for people to hear these because it's very important. Nausea, feeling sick generally, asthma, arthritis, migraine, headaches of any kind, pain in the body, in the head, bloated stomach, very standard everyday things that people come to me with. Yeah, it's such an easy thing to deal with. It really is when people know, such as myself, what they're doing. And this is the biggest problem they come up against, people knowing how to deal with these problems. Irritable bowel syndrome is linked to the bloated stomach, but it's a different thing, but they're linked. Hay fever, lethargy, having no energy, lack of energy, thinking, where's this gone? You know, what's happened to me? I'm only 40 years old and I've got no energy.
Yeah, lots of people, they complain of this.
But if you poison your brain every day, it doesn't work very well. And you're doing that when everybody's doing it. You're not doing it so much these days. But everybody's doing it because they don't realize they're doing it. And until they have the information, they can't stop. But the brain will give us that information. Weight problems, easiest thing in the world to deal with when you get your brain working properly. Because again, your brain controls all these health problems. All these conditions are created by the brain not working properly. Thrush, mouth ulcers, eczema, any kind of a skin problem. It can be internally or it can be external. It doesn't matter, it's still a skin problem. It can be a stomach ulcer, a mouth ulcer, or anything else. And it's all as a result of the brain sending out wrong signals. Irritability, well, if you poison your brain, you can expect to be irritable. Some people get very irritable when they poison their brain, with alcohol, for example. Libido, sex drive, hyperactivity in children.
That's very
again,
common,
you know, brains can create an awful lot of problems. Hyperactivity is a very straightforward thing to deal with. And there are children on drugs for this sort of stuff. It's crazy. Drugs that cause lots of health problems, by the way, certainly where hyperactivity is concerned. Crohn's disease, it's not a bowel problem. Cramp, stress, hot flushes. Stress, you don't get stressed if you don't poison your brain.
I see.
It's so simple when you think about it. Hot flushes for ladies, menopause and so on. You don't get hot flushes, it's a chemistry thing. If you don't poison yourself, your brain runs your chemistry, your brain runs your glands, your brain runs everything. So this is where you go to find the answers.
That's amazing.
And you don't need the HRT or anything else because you're fantastic. You go through all that. Epilepsy. I've had so much success with epilepsy. We'll be going into these in more detail as we go through the programs. But sleep problems, ME. ME is another condition that doctors...
What is ME?
Well, it's just something that, basically, it's a condition that's diagnosed when, in my experience, the doctors know very little or nothing about what's wrong with you. So they'll tell you, we cannot do any more. Basically, you've got a condition called ME and you've just got to live with it. In other words, go get on with your life, snap out of it or whatever. Well, it's not that easy. ME is simple to deal with. It's an intolerance to food in every case. I've dealt with thousands of people with ME and cured them. Diarrhea, constipation, it's all bowels and so on. It's dead easy. These things are so simple to deal with. Nasal problems, sneezing, blocked nasal passages, whatever it happens to be. Memory, well, if you poison your brain deliberately, you wouldn't expect it to remember things. And this is another example of children at school. They cannot concentrate. Well, they poison themselves with their toothpaste or their chicken or their breakfast cereal or the milk or whatever it happens to be, or their chocolate biscuit at lunchtime. So they cannot concentrate. So they become disruptive and cause more problems. Quickly just finish this list because it's really important to get this stuff out. Mood swings, again, you know, you get mood swings, you poison your brain. Blood pressure can be up or down. Your brain controls your blood pressure.
That's very interesting.
You don't need drugs. You just stop poisoning your brain and the blood pressure goes back to normal. Eye sensitivity, you can get lots of problems with eyes and irritation in the eyes and so on, red eyes. Heartburn, dermatitis, severe skin problem. Athlete's foot, another skin problem. Depression, colitis, PMT. Palpitations, but the heart's not quite what it could be. Well, your brain sends the signals to the heart, so let's get this working properly, and then it's all these things. It's a bit sciatica and gout. That's a pretty big range of things to be dealt with by that simple test, one food intolerance test.
There are very, very common health problems, all of these. I see here as well, Gerard, that your work has attracted a great deal of media attention around the world as well. Such as the Saidati magazine, and we have the Sunday Times, Good Life, La Voce della Tagliani, Absolute Marbella, Marie Claire, Parent Guide, Health Advisor, Daily Express, Carefree, Healthy Eating, Age Concern, the newspaper Sur of Spain, and al-Yaqza.
And these are just some of them.
Yes.
I always encourage the media to look into my work in great depth. Any radio or television or magazine stations and productions, the more they look into what I do, the more they promote it, the more they'll tell the people that there is an alternative, a real alternative to drugs in so many health cases. Where they can, I try and get them to contact the people that have written these wonderful letters and to research my work. And to go back and get that basic information, because the more they look, the more they will promote what we do, because it's the future of medicine. We just got to get the message to the people.
Yes, as well, your work has been promoted all over the radios and televisions. You had talked and...
yeah, I do lots of talks, whether it's in a situation like this in a one-to-one, or whether it's the 300 or 400 people or more, thousands of people in some cases. I will sit and I will talk for many hours and encourage people to come and to ask questions. I also want people to, ideally we can create a series of programs here about my work and how I can cure people. The people that are watching this program to get on the telephone, get on their email and fax machines and send in their requests, their questions. We will answer them. We will answer them on camera. And health problems. Let's talk about these health problems. Let me give people advice based on 10,000 people I've scanned. I know how most of these problems can be overcome simply. Scanning a person is always the best way, because everybody's unique and they've got their own brain. So we need to ideally check everybody individually. But if we cannot do that, I can still give good advice. But we need the people out there to get involved. If they want a program such as this that can go on and on weekly or fortnightly or whatever, we're happy to provide this service. But they need to do their bit and get in touch with the station. And you'll see the email address and telephone and fax numbers on the screen.
Yes. Where and when was this computerized system was developed, Gerard?
It was developed in America. Like so many things where money is concerned, and it's obviously taken an awful lot of investment. But it was developed in America about 20 years ago. It was developed by doctors. It was developed by doctors and computer experts, and they spent about 8 years proving it worked. Because it had to have a license, and it had to be licensed by the American Food and Drug Administration before it could be used in any hospital or clinic around the world. So in 8 years it got its license, it had done all the clinical trials. So it's been available now for about 12 years or so to the general public and use in the medical world.
I see. I understand you have a background of radiography and cardiology and paramedic work in London. You are not a doctor, but you teach doctors, and you are one of the 600 person in the world that they are qualified to use this scanning system. Where did you qualify?
Again, I qualified in America. There are many doctors who have applied to use this technology and have been refused. There are many doctors that use it. It was developed by doctors, but it's not just a question of wanting to have it. You have to be the right person that was prepared to use it in the right way. Because like anything that works and is successful, if it falls into the wrong hands, it can cause a lot of negative publicity. So it's very important. My background in radiography and cardiology and paramedics certainly taught me the basics of any medicine. And I've certainly saved more lives than any doctors I've ever met in that work. And certainly in 10 years of treating people with this computerized scanning, I've saved, I've cured 10,000 people. There aren't many doctors who can claim that. So being a doctor is not necessarily the end all and be all. In fact, in many cases it's a negative factor. But you obviously need to... The one point I will make though is that everybody I've treated, every single one of those 10,000 people I've treated and cured, have already been to see a doctor looking for the answer.
They come back to you.
Well, it didn't work, or they wouldn't have come to me. So, you know, the best they're going to get are pills and potions, and if that worked, well, I'd never see anybody.
That's right. That's right. How does this computerized system work, Gerard?
It's not too difficult to understand it, and I'm going to keep it simple anyway, because my life has always been, my thinking in life has always been to keep things simple, because there's no point in confusing people, and if they go away confused, there's no point in coming. It's whether I'm scanning or whether I'm explaining it. So basically, the brain's a computer, as we know, and like any computer, it runs on electricity. If your brain doesn't have electricity, there's nothing happening in the body, because your brain sends out signals to make everything happen. So you're dead. And the first thing a paramedic does when they arrive is defibrillate. They put electricity into the body.
Yeah.
So we need electricity, but we don't generate it. So we have to put it in. And we do put it into the body every day when we eat food. Food goes into the body. It doesn't matter if it's heroin or a pill from the doctor or chicken or dust from an animal. It's a drug. It goes into the body. It carries electricity into the body. And that breaks down and becomes a chemical inside the body and releases its electrical signal. Here you'll see a clock that runs off potatoes. The electricity from the potatoes is actually making that clock function. There's no batteries in the circuit. And that will run for 3 or 4 weeks on those 2 potatoes.
It's amazing.
And it's the electricity from the potatoes that arrives at our brain. It's the electricity from the chicken that arrives at our brain, and so on. But they're all different signals. And what happens is that people get this, eat the foods that suit their taste buds and their stomach, but the signal doesn't suit their brain anymore. The brain has become intolerant to it. It might have been all right a few years ago, but the brain becomes intolerant to it at some point. So you're eating and your brain's getting the wrong signal. So in goes a bad signal into that computer in your head, and out come bad signals, of course. And they're the signals that cause all these health problems, because your brain runs everything. So I can send a signal for the food to your brain, and as you see here, it's a simple process of just touching the probe on your finger. You feel nothing. I scanned 3-year-old children with quite happily. It's just making a connection to an acupuncture point. As you can see, it's quite harmless. And I can send a signal for chicken to your brain, and tomatoes and cucumber. They come up on the screen, as you can see, one at a time. And I can send a signal straight to your brain, and I can measure your brain's acceptance of that signal. And then we finish up with a printout that's been written by your brain. It really doesn't get any more accurate than that. Your brain is unique, it's individual, and it's given us the information it wants in order to function correctly. So you end up with a printout, as you can see. And at the top and bottom, you'll see the things that are outside the acceptable areas that your brain does not want. Your brain has rejected them. It's intolerant to those signals. So don't eat the foods that your brain doesn't want, and your brain will stop giving you all these health problems.
Yeah,
it's so simple.
It's amazing. Is one scan enough to clear all our health problem, or we have to have a separate scan for each problem we have? Like, for example, if I have migraine, I have stomach problem and sleep disorder, do I have to have a scan to each one of these, or one will help?
Again, it's a question I do get asked a lot, and it's important that people understand you need one test. One test, it takes about an hour and a half. I run through maybe 200 different things, mostly foods. And that is enough to get the brain working efficiently. Better than it's ever worked before in your whole life, because the first time we've actually talked to your brain. It's talking to you every single day. Every second of every day your brain talks to you. It gives you problems if you give it problems, and that's exactly what we're dealing with here. So one test is enough to cure a migraine or an eczema or an asthma. If you've got all 3, well, it'll cure them all in one go.
Cures everything.
That's right. Just stop poisoning the brain.
Yeah. Do certain food cause similar health problem? For example, if 10 people they eat, that are intolerant to mushrooms, and they all eat mushroom, they have the same headache, the 10 of them?
Right, yeah. No, that's not the way it works. And again, interesting theory, but no, because those 10 people have all got different brains. So although they're all intolerant to mushrooms, the brain in one case might create the signal might create a headache in one. It might create an asthma condition in another one, or an eczema in another one. So the brain is different. The food's the same, but the brain's different.
Yeah,
and that's what we're really tuning into.
I see. If a person doesn't actually eat the same food, would he still? He doesn't eat a certain food. Would he still have his intolerance shows on the scan?
Yeah, I can test. Yeah, I can test anything. I've got 40,000 different signals in my computer. Mostly, well, not mostly foods, but an awful lot of foods, or anything else you come in contact with on a day-to-day basis. And even if it's not in a computer, I can still test it, because we can put it into the circuit and pop it onto the plate, and it becomes part of the circuit. So we can see what your brain thinks of that.
Let's say he doesn't eat this particular kind of food. Would it still show us on the scan?
Yeah, I can test and see what your brain would think of things you'd never even heard of.
Oh, I see.
What would happen if you did eat them?
I see.
So that's very, interesting one.
What do food generally find you find that it causes the most health problems?
Which foods? Generally speaking, and I know this will shock many people that are watching today, but generally speaking, having scanned 10,000 people, without a shadow of doubt, the foods that are biggest cause of health problems, the group of foods are vegetables.
Oh, how come? Vegetables are supposed to be very healthy.
Well, that's what I thought when I first started in this business too. And I gave vegetables to my children. I'm not saying all vegetables are bad for all people. Of course they're not, because you know, everybody's an individual. But the group of foods that I find bring up the most problems are vegetables. So a vegetarian may be very healthy on vegetables, but then again they may be giving themselves major problems. Heroin is a drug that grows in the ground, and nobody in their right mind would eat that. Well, lettuce grows in the ground too. So why isn't a lettuce a drug? It is a drug, and people have never associated the two. So vegetables are not God's gift to health in so many cases, but until I check, I don't know until what suits you as an individual.
Yeah, I see. Is it possible for two people to have the same scan results?
I've never found it to be the case. I've scanned I've scanned families in so many cases around the world, and never found any comparisons. On a close comparison, there's obviously certain things that are similar, but nothing that you can link to being, or even identical twins I've scanned and found nothing similar. I really would like one day to scan Siamese twins, if I ever get the opportunity to do that. I think that would be a really fascinating thing to do.
Yeah. Very interesting.
That would be fascinating.
Once you have found the intolerance food, would people have to stop it right away and after they have done their scan?
I recommend people take their time, because if you come off the things that your brain is intolerant to too quickly, you can get withdrawal symptoms. And so if you had a headache, you came with a headache to the clinic, and you rush to come off the foods that are causing the headache, you can create more of a confusion in your brain, because once it's fixed, it's drugs on a daily basis, of chicken or coffee or whatever it happens to be. So my advice to people is take your time. It takes a lifetime to get yourself into this chemistry condition that you're in when you arrive. We need a month or so to get you out of it.
Do patients only need to see you once in order to get healthy, or they have to follow a certain course of treatment? Or
once is enough. Once, you only need to come once, but most people would try and get back once a year. Nothing stays the same. We can bring you up to this point of changing the chemistry within a month or two of a scan and become a very healthy person. But if you run it and never come back, well, in maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years, you start to slip a bit. It's like a car. You take a car to the garage once a year, and you tune it up once a year, and you keep it running well, and hopefully it doesn't let you down. Well, it's the same thing with the human body. Come back once a year if you can, and we'll have another look. But most things are, you can go back into eating again in time.
Yes. Are there any side effects when people have done the scan?
There's a huge side effect. People get healthy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. That's the good thing.
Well, that's the only one they get.
Yeah. How many problem food you can find you usually find on a scan? On a normal scan.
Okay, I test about 200 items. I check for foods, about 140 different, 50, 60 different foods, includes herbs and spices as well as the everyday foods. I check levels of vitamins and minerals. I check for dusts and feathers and animal hair and all sorts of things. So out of that we might find maybe 20 on average, sometimes a little more, but on average 20, 25. But half of those things people are not eating anyway. They just would be a problem if they did eat them. And of those 10 or so that they're eating, they might only be eating 2 or 3 on a regular basis. So it's not too difficult.
I know you test about 200 or 150, over 150 different kind of food. But what if a person eats unusual food which is unknown to you, like in the Middle East they have this mlokhia vegetables, which it's unknown in Europe and it's unknown to you. How can you check this out?
Well, I work in the Middle East. I work in Dubai from time to time, in Abu Dhabi, and often come across this situation. It's not a problem. If they bring the food to the clinic, we can pop it on the plate, and it becomes part of the circuit, the brass plate. It then introduces it to the circuit, so we can test it. It's not a difficult thing at all.
I see. Can a patient introduce the problem food back into his diet after he becomes healthy, or he has to keep away from it all his life?
No, this is the good thing about it. By eliminating the food that's causing the problem goes away, and your chemistry changes, and you become a healthy person. So you can reintroduce the foods. after 6 to 9 months, but ideally we'll have a look in the biggest problems. Hold on until you come back for a year. But when I test the person for the second time, they're a different person, they're a different chemistry set, they're a healthy person, the brain's not been poisoned for 9 months, so we're going to get a different set of results, and most things are edible again without any problems whatsoever.
How long is it before that people start feeling healthy?
Generally speaking, within a month or so. With children, it's even quicker. I had a mother ring up this morning saying I scanned 2 weeks ago. It's already starting to improve the asthma condition. Children have had less time to create the problem, so they recover much quicker. But we're going to be, hopefully, in a series of programs that we're going to be doing, bringing people into the studio that have health problems so we can talk about it and bring them back once they've been cured so they can tell everybody out there all about it too. But for this, we need people to contact us. We need people to get in touch.
Yes.
We can do what we're doing here. We can do our best and we can get the information out, but we need people to give us feedback. We need people to contact us to get this thing moving. We have the best technology in the world. And we need people to get this message to the people so they can choose to use it, or to question the authorities as to why they're not being allowed to use it. Because as you can imagine, if we cure people without drugs, there's an awful lot of people out there that would rather we didn't.
Yeah. Well, we finished our time, Gerard, and thank you very much for coming here to the studio and explaining so well about your computerized food intolerance. And I'm sure there are lots of people out there would like to hear more or ask you more questions, or even maybe book for an appointment with you. If you would like to know more about Mr. Kielty's work, then you can check with his website. It's www.healthscan.co.uk, and you have all the telephone numbers written in the screen. And we hope we'll continue and we make more talks with Mr. Kielty.
We can do this. We can go on and cure thousands of people around the world with good advice.
Yes.
The benefits of the information that's been built up over the last 10,000 patients, it's available to people. They've just got to ask for it. So get in touch with us and let's get this thing moving and get the message out to the world.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerard.
Thanks very much for having me. Bye-bye.